On Mother's Day, my son walked through my door holding a bouquet of yellow sunflowers, bright and cheerful, just like the boy he used to be. He set them on the kitchen table, glanced around the small living room, and smiled, that familiar, distracted smile of a man always half somewhere else. "Mom," he said, settling into the chair across from me, "Patricia's still sending you the money each month, right? $3,000. I just want to make sure you're comfortable." My hands stilled on the teacup. $3,000. For the past 6 months, I had been stretching every dollar, clipping grocery coupons, accepting meal deliveries from the local senior center, and quietly thanking God every time a neighbor dropped off extra bread. $3,000 had not once passed through my hands. "Sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice soft, "the community center has been helping me get by." The smile vanished from his face like fog burning off in the morning sun, and then Patricia appeared in the doorway. My daughter-in-law, stunning in a cream blouse and tailored trousers, carrying the kind of confidence that fills a room before the person does. Her perfume was expensive, her smile was practiced, and her eyes, when they landed on me, were careful. She had no idea that on that very afternoon, the performance she had been running for months was about to meet its final act. "My name is Eleanor Marsh. I am 68 years old, a widow, and I live alone in a modest house on the edge of Clearwater, a small city in central Texas. This house raised my son, Nathan. After my husband, Gerald, passed away from a stroke 7 years ago, I settled into a quieter life, tending my vegetable garden, volunteering twice a week at St. Andrew's Church, and teaching a small watercolor class for seniors at the community hall. I didn't have much, but I had enough until the cost of living crept upward and my savings began to feel thin as paper. Nathan, my only child, had made something of himself. At 40, he ran a growing logistics company, drove a new car, and lived in a neighborhood where the lawns were professionally trimmed. I was proud of him. I had raised him with everything I had, and I believed, truly believed, that he was a kind, honest man. So when he looked at me over that kitchen table on Mother's Day and asked about the money his wife was supposedly delivering, I understood immediately that something was very wrong. The try-botting question was not whether Patricia had been sending it. The question was where it had been going. And if you think you already know the answer, stay with me, because what I discovered was far worse than I expected. After Nathan and Patricia left that afternoon, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time. The sunflowers he had brought drooped slightly in the vase, their bright petals already curling at the edges. 6 months. 6 months of donated canned goods, of checking the mailbox with hope that faded week by week, of going to bed wondering whether I'd miscounted something in my own budget. $3,000 a month, $18,000 total. I was an organized woman, 40 years of household bookkeeping, 12 years as treasurer of the church women's committee. I did not misplace money. I did not forget deposits. I had ledgers that went back to the year Nathan started middle school. That evening I pulled out my records book and spread it open on the table. Every line was accounted for. Prescriptions, electricity, the small monthly donation I still gave to the church food pantry. There was no entry reading transfer from Nathan, not once, not in 6 months. The next morning, I walked to Westfield Community Bank, where I had kept an account since Gerald and I were newlyweds. I sat across from a patient young teller named Rosa and slid my account passbook across the counter. "Could you please check whether there have been any transfers into this account from a Nathan Marsh? He's my son. He said his wife has been delivering $3,000 a month for the last 6 months. Rosa typed carefully, then looked up with the practiced neutrality of someone delivering news they wish they didn't have to. "Mrs. Marsh, I'm not seeing any transfers like that. The only recent credit is a small interest payment in March." I thanked her, stood up, and walked outside. The Texas morning air was already warm, carrying the smell of cut grass and car exhaust. I stood on the sidewalk, completely still. No transfers, no envelopes, no letters. For 6 months, while I had been rationing soup and quietly accepting other people's charity, my son had believed his wife was caring for me. That evening I opened a fresh notebook, the blue one Gerald had given me for my 65th birthday. On the first page, I wrote 2 things. Find the truth. Do it calmly. I was not an angry woman by nature. Gerald used to say my greatest strength was that I could see clearly in situations that made other people blind with emotion. I intended to use that clarity now, because one thing I knew for certain, Patricia had made a grave miscalculation. She had underestimated the woman who raised the man she married. And in the next part, I'll show you exactly how I began to build the case that would bring everything to light. One quiet, careful day at a time. I started documenting everything the day after I returned from the bank. Not in anger, in method. I had spent 3 decades balancing accounts, and I knew that numbers, dates, and details were more powerful than any argument made in a raised voice. So I treated this the way I had treated every discrepancy I had ever found in a ledger, with precision. Every time Patricia visited, I recorded it. The date, the time she arrived, the time she left, what she brought. Usually flowers or store-bought cookies, never an envelope, and exactly what she said. I wrote it all down in the blue notebook in my neat, even handwriting. Tuesday the 8th. Patricia stopped by at noon, brought a candle and a jar of honey, said the bank transfer must have been delayed, no envelope, voice calm, no eye contact when I mentioned the account. Saturday the 22nd. Called instead of visiting, said she was at a charity lunch. I heard restaurant music in the background, said she'd sort it all out next week. Line by line, the picture sharpened. One afternoon in July, while I was deadheading the roses along the front fence, Patricia's white sedan pulled up. She stepped out looking polished, wide sunglasses, a linen dress, heels that were impractical for a garden visit. She was carrying a bunch of lavender tied with twine. "I brought these for you, Eleanor," she said warmly. "Lavender is supposed to ease stress. You've seemed tense lately." I set down my gardening shears and looked at her. "My memory is perfectly fine, Patricia. Fine enough to know that no money has come through my account, not once." Something flickered across her face. Then she smiled again, smooth as glass. "That's so strange. I've been so consistent about it. Your bank must have a processing issue." I asked them directly, I said. They confirmed nothing has arrived. A silence fell between us. Even the neighbor's dog stopped barking. "I'll look into it," she said quickly, turning toward her car. "I'll double-check everything this week." I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing around the corner. Then I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my notebook. July 22nd. Patricia came. Lavender, no money, flustered when I mentioned the bank, left in a hurry. Then I went to St. Andrew's and found Reverend Hanson after the afternoon service. He had known me for over 20 years. I handed him a sealed envelope. "Father," I said, "if something happens and I can't come to service 1 week, please hold this for me." He studied my face. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" I smiled gently, preparing for the truth to be heard. What I didn't yet know was that the truth was larger and more deliberate than even I had imagined, and in the next part, I'll tell you what the bank confirmed and what it meant. I had always believed that if you asked the right question to the right person, the truth would surface eventually. The challenge was knowing which question to ask. After Patricia's nervous departure, I spent 2 evenings thinking. The bank had confirmed no money reached my account, but Nathan believed he had been sending it, so the money had gone somewhere. The question was where. I called Nathan's company on a Tuesday morning from the payphone at the post office, 2 blocks from my house. I didn't want to call from home. Something told me to be careful. "This is Eleanor Marsh," I said when the company's main line picked up. "Nathan Marsh's mother. I'd like to speak with someone in finance. It's a personal matter." After a brief hold, a composed woman named Mrs. Calloway answered. She was the firm's senior accounts manager. "Mrs. Marsh," she said, after I explained the transfers, "I can't share private financial information, but I can tell you that the automated transfers you're describing were processed on schedule. The issue may be on the receiving end." "The receiving end," I repeated. "Can you tell me the account name the funds were directed to?" A pause. "I'm not at liberty to share specifics, but the name on the recipient account does match yours. However, and I want to be careful here, the account number itself is different from what I see on file for your personal account." I gripped the receiver. "A different account number, but in my name." "Thank you, Mrs. Calloway," I said, as evenly as I could. "That's everything I needed." I walked home slowly, the morning heat rising off the pavement. Someone had opened an account using my name. Someone who had access to my personal details, my ID, my son's finances, and the patience to build a quiet, tidy trap. Only one person fit that description. That night I opened to a fresh page in my blue notebook and wrote, "A second account, my name, not my number, Patricia." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote my late husband a letter, not to mail anywhere, just to organize my thoughts the way I used to when he was alive, and we would talk things through over late-night tea. "Gerald, I think I know what she's done. I'm not afraid, but I need to be smarter than she expects." I folded the letter and tucked it inside the notebook. The next morning, I called an old college friend, a woman named Vivian Carr, who had spent 30 years in financial law. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but she answered on the second ring. "Vivian," I said, "I need your help. I think my daughter-in-law has been stealing from my son and doing it in my name." The line was quiet for just a moment. Then Vivian said, "Tell me everything." And everything, it turned out, was only the beginning, because what the company's own accountant brought to my door the very next morning shocked even me. The morning was already bright and warm when I heard the knock at the door. I was not expecting anyone. I opened it to find a man in his mid-50s, silver at the temples, wearing a slightly wrinkled jacket and carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Mr. Aldridge, the chief financial officer at Nathan's company. "Your call to Mrs. Calloway came to my attention," he said carefully. "I thought you should know some things directly. May I come in?" I stood aside and let him enter. He sat at my kitchen table and opened his briefcase. Inside was a thick folder, printed statements, clean columns of numbers, the language of accounting I had spent decades learning to read. He slid it across to me. "These are copies of 6 months of automated transfers," he said. $3,000 each, sent on the 1st of every month from your son's personal account." I turned the pages slowly. Sender, Nathan Marsh. Recipient, Eleanor Marsh. But the account number listed was not mine. "Who holds this account?" I asked, though I already knew. Mr. Aldridge removed his glasses and set them on the table. "It was opened in your name approximately 7 months ago. The authorization documents carry your signature, but our bank flagged the ID used as a potential forgery when we ran a later audit. The account is controlled by Patricia Marsh." The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, a mockingbird sang from the oak tree. "Is there more?" I asked. He nodded. "The company credit card for Marsh Logistics has also been used irregularly. In the past 4 months, there have been personal charges, spa treatments, clothing, airline tickets, a vehicle lease, just over $28,000. I looked at the statements in my hands. Each receipt was a small, specific cruelty: a spa day in Houston, a first-class flight, a lease agreement on a new car. I thought of Patricia walking into my house with lavender and cookies, smiling warmly, calling me Eleanor. I thought of her telling my son that she visited faithfully every month. I pressed my hands flat on the table to keep them steady. "Mr. Aldridge," I said, "if I wanted to pursue this legally, would you be willing to provide documentation?" He met my eyes without hesitation. "Mrs. Marsh, I came here because I believe in doing what is right. I've already secured copies of every transaction. Your friend Miss Carr can contact me directly." After he left, I sat alone for a long time. The papers were spread across my kitchen table in the afternoon light. I stacked them carefully, placed them in a metal tin, and locked it in the cabinet beneath the sink. Then I picked up the phone and called Vivian. "She used my name," I said. "We have the proof." But having the proof and knowing how to use it, those were two very different things. And in the next part, I'll tell you exactly how I planned the evening that would change everything. Vivian Carr was a methodical woman. When she arrived 2 days later, she brought her own folder of printed notes and a calm that reminded me why I had trusted her since our university years. "We have enough to file today," she said, spreading her materials on the kitchen table beside mine. "Identity fraud, elder financial exploitation, misuse of company funds. The case is solid." "I know," I said, "but I want Nathan to hear it first. Not from a lawyer, not from a judge, from me, in this house." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "That's riskier." She could deny everything to his face. "She won't be able to," I said. "Not if I set it up correctly." I had a plan. It was simple. I would invite Nathan and Patricia to Sunday dinner, something ordinary enough that it wouldn't raise suspicion. I would cook his childhood favorite, slow-braised chicken with herbs, the kind of meal that softened even the most guarded hearts. And then I would present the truth, carefully, in the right order, at the right moment, so that Patricia would contradict herself before she even realized what had happened. I spent Saturday in the kitchen, cooking slowly, the house filled with the smell of rosemary and warm bread. I polished the silverware Gerald and I had received as a wedding gift. I set the dining table with candles and my good dishes. Everything looked welcoming, safe, completely ordinary. When Sunday evening came, I heard their car in the driveway. Nathan walked in with white lilies. Patricia followed, elegant as always, wearing a soft gray dress and a pearl bracelet I had never seen before. New, I noted, recent. We sat. We talked about the weather, the garden, the neighbors down the road. I let the meal settle, let the conversation warm. I watched Patricia relax, watched the way she tilted her head toward Nathan when he spoke, confident and at ease. Then, over dessert, I said casually, "I wanted to say thank you for the money this month, Patricia. It arrived right on time." She smiled, pleased. "Of course, Eleanor. Always on the first, just like we agreed." Nathan frowned slightly. "Wait, I set the auto transfer for the 15th, not the 1st. The room went still. Patricia blinked. I thought, "No," Nathan said slowly. "I specifically set it for the 15th because that's when the payroll clears." The silence that followed was the kind that fills a room completely, pressing against the walls. I set down my fork and looked at her calmly. "I'll go to the bank on the 15th then," I said, "just to make sure everything has been arriving correctly." Patricia's smile had gone very thin. "And if you'd like to know what happened when Mr. Aldridge walked through my door that same evening, stay with me, because the next part is where everything came apart." I had asked Mr. Aldridge to come at 8 o'clock. He arrived precisely on time. Patricia saw him first, and I watched the color shift in her face, from composed to pale, in the space of a single breath. "Who is that?" Nathan asked, turning toward the door. "I'm Aldridge," he said evenly, "Chief Financial Officer at Marsh Logistics. Your mother asked me to bring something tonight." He set a large envelope on the table without theatrics, without apology. Nathan opened it. The statements were organized and clear, 6 transfers, $3,000 each, all directed to an account in my name that I had never opened. Below those, the company card charges, spa receipts, airline tickets, the car lease. Nathan went through each page in silence. His jaw tightened with every line. "Patricia," he said quietly, not looking up. "What is this?" "It was a misunderstanding," she said, her voice brittle and rising. "I was managing things. I was going to sort it out. You were always so busy. I was handling everything." "You were handling it," Nathan repeated, very slowly. "You were handling my mother's money, that you redirected into an account you opened in her name. I only borrowed. You forged her signature." His voice broke on the last word. She began to cry, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. I had expected this part, the tears, the pivoting, the appeal to emotion. I had prepared myself for it, but I had not fully prepared for how much it would hurt to watch my son's face as he understood. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't look at her at all after that. Reverend Hanson, who had arrived quietly with Mr. Aldridge, spoke from his chair in the corner of the room, his voice low and measured. "Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones spoken at the dinner table," he said, "but they are still the ones that heal." Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping the wooden floor. "I can't do this," she said, her voice cracking. "If you're both going to believe her over me." She grabbed her purse and walked out. The front door closed behind her with a soft, final click. Nathan sat in silence for a long time after. I cleared the plates around him, slowly, the way I used to clean up after his childhood birthdays. Careful, unhurried, present. Finally, he said, "Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know," I said simply. I put a cup of tea in front of him and sat down across the table. The evening had done what it needed to do. But the story wasn't over yet, because what happened next in the courtroom was something I had to go through alone, and in the next part, I'll tell you what that felt like. The preliminary hearing was set for a Monday morning. I arrived early with Vivian. The courthouse hallway was long and white, smelling faintly of floor wax and old paper. I had worn a navy blue dress, Gerald's favorite color, on me. I wanted to feel like myself in that room, not like a victim, not like a symbol, just Eleanor Marsh. Patricia was already seated at the defendant's table when we entered. She wore a charcoal blazer, her hair pulled back. Her lawyer was young and nervous. Beside her, Nathan sat in the gallery, alone, looking as though he hadn't slept in days. He didn't look at me when I entered. I understood. The judge called the session to order. Vivian rose first. "Your Honor," she said, "for 6 consecutive months, the defendant opened and controlled a fraudulent bank account under the plaintiff's identity, diverting $3,000 per month, $18,000 total, away from its intended recipient. The defendant also misused the company credit card for personal expenditures totaling over $27,000. We have bank records, card statements, a forged authorization document, and the testimony of the company's own CFO. She placed the evidence binder on the judge's desk. Patricia's lawyer tried. He argued confusion, household management, an informal arrangement between spouses. He suggested, carefully, that I was elderly and possibly mistaken about what I'd been told. That was when Vivian placed my blue notebook on the table. Mrs. Marsh kept a detailed written record, she said. Every visit, every date, every word spoken about the money, every excuse offered. Her documentation aligns perfectly with the bank transaction records. If the court would like to call this forgetfulness, it would need to explain how a woman with no memory kept 6 months of entries that matched the financial data to the day. A quiet murmur moved through the room. The judge reviewed the notebook. He reviewed the statements. He studied the forged authorization signature beside a copy of my actual signature from the bank's own records. When he looked up, his voice was dry and certain. The court finds the evidence presented sufficient and credible. The defendant is ordered to repay the full amount of $18,000 plus applicable fees within 90 days. The defendant's access to any financial accounts belonging to Mr. Nathan Marsh is suspended for 4 years. A mandatory financial compliance review will be completed within 60 days. His gavel struck the desk. I sat very still. I did not feel triumph. What I felt was something quieter, the release of a breath held for 6 months. Outside, the sky was overcast. Light rain had begun to fall. I stood under the courthouse awning and whispered to no one in particular. I just wanted the truth to be known. And the truth had found its place. But what came after the verdict was something I hadn't anticipated at all, and I'll tell you about it in the next part. The house was very quiet after the trial. Nathan went through his own accounting of everything in the weeks that followed, the finances, the marriage, the years he had let someone else manage his life without asking enough questions. He didn't call me for a while. I didn't push. Some reckonings require solitude. The restitution arrived in late summer, a bank notification confirming the deposit of $18,000. I sat in front of the screen and read the words twice. I thought I would feel relief. What I felt instead was something more complicated, like closing a heavy book that had taken too long to finish. I kept a small portion for necessary repairs. The roof had been leaking since spring, and the old water heater finally gave out. The rest I put to a different purpose. I called Vivian and Reverend Hansen and asked them to meet me at St. Andrew's. I want to start something, I told them. A small foundation for seniors who have been financially exploited by their own families. People who know what it's like to love someone and still end up counting change at the grocery store because of them. Reverend Hansen smiled the way he always did when he was moved by something. Eleanor, God has a way of giving pain a second purpose. Vivian was already writing in her notebook. We'll register it as a non-profit. I'll handle the legal structure. What do you want to call it? I thought for a moment. Steady hands, I said, because that's what you need when everything around you is shaking. 3 months later, Steady Hands officially opened in a small room adjoining St. Andrew's. 3 desks, 2 donated filing cabinets, a hand-lettered sign. Each week, people came, an elderly man whose granddaughter had emptied his retirement account, a woman whose son had forged her name on a home equity loan, a widow who had been told by her stepchildren that she was too confused to manage her own affairs. I listened to every one of them. I held their hands. I told them what I had learned, that the truth does not arrive like a sudden rescue. It arrives quietly, when you are patient and precise enough to let it. Nathan began coming on Saturdays. He drove in early, brought coffee, helped with the files. He didn't talk much at first. He mostly listened, the same way I used to listen to him when he was a boy working through something difficult. But week by week, something in him steadied. One morning, watching him sit across from an elderly client, organizing paperwork with careful attention, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel so soon. Pride. Not the complicated, cautious kind I had carried for years, but the simple, clean kind. The kind that comes from watching someone choose to be better. And then one rainy October night, he knocked on my door. And what happened next is the part of this story I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It was past 10 o'clock when the knock came. I was at my desk reviewing the foundation's upcoming grant application, a cup of chamomile tea cooling beside me. The rain had been steady for hours, drumming against the roof in a sound I've always found calming, steady, purposeful, indifferent to whatever is happening inside the house. When I opened the door, Nathan was standing in the rain. He was soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes red. He looked the way he had as a 12-year-old after his first major disappointment. Raw, unguarded, years of composure temporarily washed away. "Mom," he said, his voice cracked on the single word. I stepped aside and let him in. He went to the young, sat on the sofa, and pressed his face into his hands. I didn't rush him. I got a towel from the hall closet, the way I used to after he came in from playing in the yard, and I dried his hair gently while he gathered himself. "She's gone," he finally said. She drained what was left of the personal savings account before she left, took the car. I got a single message: "You chose wrong." I set the towel down and sat across from him. "Nathan," I said, "what she did, all of it, it was never about you choosing wrong. It was about someone who believed she could take whatever she wanted and call it love." He looked up at me. "I should have seen it. Maybe," I said honestly, "but you were trusting. That isn't the same as being foolish." He was quiet for a long time. The fire in the small hearth crackled and settled. Outside, the rain softened. "Can I keep helping at the foundation?" he asked. "I'll see you Saturday," I said. He stayed until midnight, drinking tea and saying very little. But before he left, he stood in the doorway and turned back to look at me. Really look at me, the way children do when they are seeing a parent clearly for perhaps the first time. "You never stopped being my mother," he said, "even when I stopped acting like your son." I walked him out to his car in the rain. On the way back inside, I stopped on the porch and looked up at the sky. The clouds had thinned. A single star was visible through the break. Gerald used to say that the people who love you most are the ones who keep the light on, even when you've been gone too long. I had kept it on, and Nathan had finally found his way back. That night, I opened my blue notebook for the last time and wrote, "The storm has passed. The house is quiet. My son is home." I closed the notebook and set it on the shelf beside Gerald's photo. If you have stayed with me through all 10 parts of this story, then you know it was never really about money. It was about dignity, truth, and the particular courage it takes to love someone through their worst chapter without losing yourself in it. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever loved someone who let you down, or been the one who let someone down and found your way back, share it in the comments. Your story matters too. And if you believe that truth, even when it takes its time, always finds its way home, then stay with me for the next story. I promise it will be worth it.